So today we're excited to have Bob Becker here with us today, but I'm going to let the Waldmans introduce him. So I will just do some introductory stuff about learning before lunch. As you know, we are a membership-driven organization, private nonprofit, with the assistance of the University of New Orleans Foundation and Alumni Center. They're very gracious in allowing us this space to use for our meetings every month. Next upcoming is the Friends of the Library book sale, which I am also part of. So I get to, since I have the microphone, I get to give a shout out to them as well. So if you're looking to expand your library, please stop by and check out the book sale. It is April 18th, 19th, and 20th at the OK Long Library. So we are always looking for presenters for our speaker series. So if you have recommendations, please don't hesitate to contact us. And we do ask if you nominate someone and we are able to arrange them to speak with us, then you get to introduce them. So, but don't hold that back. Don't hold yourself back just because you're afraid of public speaking. Because as you see, obviously, I'm so professional at it, right? So don't worry about that. Please, if you're online, go ahead and mute yourself. If you have your cell phones with you, please put them on silent. I'll do the same. Let's check. Okay. And Bob will be selling books and having a book signing after his presentation today as well. So it's over there to the side of the road. So I would like to introduce Bud and Debbie Waldman. Yeah. They will come and introduce Bob.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We survived the weather, right? We went through it 3 times. We were visiting our daughter in Dallas Monday night when it came through. It's like a hurricane. We drove over it coming home. That was exciting. It was a terrible ride. Good night. And then we had to go. Crazy. Anyway. 48 years ago, a family moved across the street from us in Broadmoor, and it was the Beckers. And our lives have been totally intertwined, our kids, our grandkids, ever since. You know, and I'm blessed to say that we're more like family than friends. And our 2 oldest daughters are 50, and they're still best friends in North Dallas, and they live 15 minutes away from each other. So that's how crazy it's been. But I wrote this little paragraph I want to share. Whether in his relationships to his family or friends, in his professional relationships, or in service to the people of our city, Bob has consistently had our backs, day in and day out, in good times and in rough times. He's calm, smart, funny, determined, and hardworking, and he never would draw attention to himself. You see them interviewing him on TV. It was about we in the park, you know. He's made a huge difference in all of our lives, as I hope you'll come to realize today. When we first knew him, he worked for the City Planning Commission and became the director of the New Orleans City Planning Commission. He held senior management positions with the Audubon Nature Institute. And then he became CEO of New Orleans City Park in 2001. He retired in 2021. During that time, he dramatically improved the park's financial position, securing its first ever public funding and developing and implementing a nationally recognized master plan that led to over $200 million in capital investment. Prior to managing the city park, he also taught at UNO, right, Bob?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And now Bob's going to tell you about his awards. Okay.
Okay. Now, Bob's the recipient of numerous awards, including National Planning Award from the American Planning Association, a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Bureau of Governmental Research, and a Special Recognition Award from the National Park Service. He was named a Hero of Katrina Recovery by New Orleans Magazine. He's the author of the recent book, New Orleans City Parks, From Tragedy to Triumph. He holds degrees from State University of New York in Buffalo, University of Iowa, and the University of New Orleans. Bob lives in New Orleans with his wife, Pat, and their golden retriever, Maggie. Here's Bob.
So I want you to know that our daughters are 50, but Pat and I had our daughter when we were 12. Um, I did want to point out, my wife is in the back there. She comes to make sure I tell the truth all the time. John Scheid, who's the sales manager at Pelican, he comes to make sure I hustle the book as best I possibly can. So obviously, I've had a varied career, and the book talks about that. Coming to New Orleans and from Buffalo, New York, and settling in here with my family. And the book covers my years with the City Planning Commission, and then at Audubon, where I was managed the zoo in Audubon Park for a while. But most of the book is about City Park. It's about the time that I spent at City Park. I was recruited come to City Park from Audubon in 2001 because they were in bad shape. They were in really bad shape. Finances were terrible, the morale was terrible, the equipment was terrible, and the board at City Park thought I could do something about that. So they recruited me to come over, and I went there, figuring that I could really do some good with my city planning background and all that. And I was excited to come to the park, and I showed up at my first day in the office in August of 2001, just before 9/11, actually. And I went into the office, and I was, super excited to be there. I know I'm going to turn this thing around. It's going to be great. And my secretary at the time, when I got in the office, I was in my suit, and I looked really good. Good. Anyway, and she said to me, "There's someone from the grounds crew who wants to meet you." And I thought, well, send him right in. I mean, this is management 101, right? I mean, I'm going to meet my team and my crew, and I'm going to jump right in, and this is going to be great. Send him right in. Well, he had just come off a lawnmower, so he came in and he was a little disheveled and all that, but I'm meeting the team, and it's going to be great. And so he comes in, and I said, "Hi, I'm Bob," and full of excitement. And he says to me, "Mr. Becker, are we going to get paid on Thursday?" Because the park had been missing paydays, for various people, because it had no money. And I thought, well, my wife is not going to be happy about this. So, this is not going to be very good. So that was my introduction to beginning at City Park. So the book is entitled From Tragedy to Triumph, and it is about the journey, my journey, our family's journey from 2001 to 2021, and all the things that we did in the park. Let's see here. Let's see. Talking. Huh? Okay, I'm going to dance now for a while, and there'll be a song, and in spite of what I said, there will be a quiz. So everybody has to pay attention.
Let's see if I can get you going.
And then everybody has to buy a book. I didn't know if they told you that when you came in, but everybody had to do that.
1 second. We had to go in, and now
It was going from one.
yeah. Let's see here. Okay, see if that works for you.
Okay. Let's see. All right. There we go.
Okay.
Can you pin this on here? That's all right.
Let's see if that's close for you.
Right, does that work? Everybody hear me? Okay. All right, so your screen sharing is paused.
Yeah, I see that.
Anyway, when we get this going,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we will.
Try this one more time.
Talking about Princess Kate and.
Right.
Right again?
1 second, we are screen sharing. Let's resume our show. All right.
So some of this presentation is going to be lost on you all because you're familiar with City Park, but I give this around the state, and so some people are not familiar with City Park. So just quickly, City Park obviously is located in the heart of the city. It's a huge space, over 1,300 acres, twice as big as Central Park in New York, mile wide, 3 miles long. It's over 150 years old. First land for the park was a donation from John McDonough back in the 1850s when he donated his estate to the city of Baltimore and New Orleans. A lot of people come and visit. It has more visitation than all the state parks combined. Okay, let me see here.
It'll be a challenge today.
A challenge.
Okay,
Maybe I should just click it.
let's see. Yeah, because it's not even ready for us right now. What is the deal? Try this one more time, guys. Sorry.
Anyway. Tell my wife I do not know this one. Don't know how we got any present dancing. Not know her. Yeah.
All right, let me try. This is not.
Let's see where you are. So.
Here we go. Let me try this. Let me get the PowerPoint up. Let's close this show out because it seems to be stalled. Go back and share.
Like, I just click on
Maybe.
the sign.
Try it.
It will, yeah. But I don't know if I don't have a screen share going on for the folks at home. So they're not seeing it though.
Very nice seeing you.
Yeah,
What a good event here. You know, turn home.
we're trying. Okay.
Should come.
All right, I'm gonna share it.
Anyway, the second slide is really what's in the park. I'm sure all of you know it's in the park. So, I've seen. Yeah, it's there.
It's got great fire. Okay.
So it's in the park, lots of stuff in the park, but when I got to the park, it didn't have all of this. So let's see.
If it's going forward for you.
I'm coming.
Okay, I'm just.
We're running. Wow.
I'll leave
So,
it.
if you're interested in here, yeah, the city park is governed by a board called the City Park Improvement Association. And was put together by a group of businessmen in the late 1800s after McDonough had made a donation of the land. The city was not really interested in doing anything with the park. And so a group of businessmen got together and they formed an association and they started selling lemonade and they moved the cows off and they, began to have little concerts and all kinds of stuff. And then they incorporated, and the state and the city both said, well, since you're the only ones who seem to be interested in this park and want to do anything, we're going to give you the authority to do things. So the City Park Improvement Association and its board are the legal fiduciary and entities that run City Park. Of course, that was put to the test when Katrina hit. And when I got to the park in 2001, as I told you, it was in very bad financial shape. And so we began to fundraise and I began to make this kind of presentation actually to neighborhood organizations and business groups over the city. And we kept telling them the same thing. Look, park gets no public financing, doesn't get any money. It's a huge piece of property. It cannot go on this way. It cannot make it. We cannot make it. Getting no public tax dollars and, selling golf tickets and, tickets to a shelter house. I mean, we can't do it. And so at some point, the citizens of this community are going to have to decide that they want to support this park or not, or we're not going to be able to handle it. And we were making progress. We were doing a lot of good things. We were raising money for people. I bought new equipment. We were able to do some very innovative things back then. The park never had a development person to raise money, so I managed to get money to hire one. We bought, as I said, new equipment so that our team could feel, like we cared about them and they had, equipment to do the job. And then Katrina hit. So the hurricane, terrible. We've all heard it many times. We're coming up on the 20th anniversary. It's really pretty amazing when you think about it. But the park was fundamentally annihilated in that storm. I mean, it was fundamentally annihilated. Every building was damaged or destroyed. We lost all our equipment. We lost 1,000 trees immediately, another 1,000 within 6 months. And because the park was totally dependent on self-generated revenue from what we would earn in the park, when the storm hit, all of the revenue making capability was destroyed. And so there was no way to make any revenue. So I was forced to lay off 90% of the staff that we had. And other than just a couple of minor weddings that we managed to hold, that had already paid a down payment for, we had basically no money. And we had 13 people that I was able to keep on staff to take care of the 1,300 acres. And then a local foundation stepped up and provided money to retain the botanical garden staff, the 10 people on the botanical garden staff. So we had 23 people from a full-time workforce of about 125 and volunteers and people who came to the park and chipped in, of maybe 100 or so part-time and volunteers. So it was not good, right? It's not good. This photograph of the park underwater, you can see in the lower left-hand corner this helicopter that's there. George Bush is in that helicopter, flying over the city after he passed over in the plane. You remember they looked down. Not a good moment for him, but he's in that helicopter, and I got this photograph from David Grunfeld, who's the director of photography at the TP, and David was in another helicopter, taking this picture of President Bush surveying the park. So it was bad, right? We all know it was really bad, and we were left pretty devastated. When I got back about a week or so later to the park, we evacuated to Dallas, and then I got back. It was like this. It was totally closed. And I thought it would take 25 years for the park to recover. I really did. I said, we had nothing. We had no money. We had no staff. No equipment. We just didn't have anything. I mean, we were flat. This is a couple of pictures of the National Guard that were in the park. The National Guard showed up. They made their headquarters in the art museum, partially to protect the art in the art museum from potential of looting. So when we got to the park, of course, there was no law and order in the park, right? There was no police. There was no nothing. And so we made friends with the National Guard. We liked the National Guard. We loved the National Guard, actually. And one of the units was from Oregon, and they had, most of their people had never been to the South, and they all like, it's hot here. It's really hot. It's hot. So you're correct. It's hot. We had over 300 contractors in the park. They came to clean the city. They were all under contract with various groups to come and clean up the city, and they just camped in the park. And after they got started, and after about probably October or so, we managed to get a trailer from the state. They dragged a trailer down, terrible thing, and that was our office, that was our office for us. And they dragged this trailer down and we would go into the park and we would see this. And of course, at night, there were no lights. I mean, right, you all remember there were no lights except the lights that would come from these groups of campers. It was like the Wild West, right? There was no police, there was nothing. So the few women that I was able to retain on our crew, I had to send them home early before it got dark because it was bad there. But anyway, so I got one of my guys who happened to be our risk manager that I managed to retain, and I said, look, why don't we go and try to collect rent from these people? I mean, they're all camping in the park, right? And because there's no hotels, there's no, so they're all camping in the park. Why don't we go and collect rent from them? And he looked at me like, say what? And I said, sure, I mean, they're gonna, once they find out it's for the park, they're gonna like it, so anyway, he went out on that day, and at the end of the day, he came back and he said, Bob, he said, before I go out tomorrow, I need somebody with a weapon to throw this. Because these are a lot of trouble guys, and they should, I 10 and ask for 35 and up. 10, and I've got hold on me, and I need, with it. Heavy, in there to help me out. So then a couple of us, Kim and myself and another guy, we went out, and once the campers understood that the money was going to go to the park and was not going to go to the city or anybody else, they were mostly happy, and they paid. They paid us every week like $35. We would show up, they'd have barbecues. It was pretty interesting. Along the way, we had successes and failures. At one point, you may remember that the mayor and the governor calling out for temporary housing sites, right? You could house trailers for teachers and first responders to get them to come. And we thought, we have land in the park, it's temporary. So let's see. So we contacted the General Services Administration, and we actually designed 3 different subdivisions in the park that would have held over 1,000 people. And the GSA was going to pay us money to rent space in the park. We thought, it's going to come in, the government's going to pay us for land, they're going to put housing up, everybody's going to love this, we're going to be able to have people in the park. And then the government decided that you couldn't have housing in the park for just first responders, right? Couldn't do that, and teachers. It had to be open to everybody. So it was not seen very favorably by a lot of people. And then a lot of people who thought, this is never going to be temporary, it's going to be permanent, and we're going to have permanent housing in the park. It was never the case, but nevertheless, people, thought that. So at the end of the day, it dragged out so long. The General Services Administration told us we needed a full environmental impact study that would take a year to complete. So this is temporary housing, this is disaster housing, what do you mean? But at the end of the day, the government said, no, we can't do it, whatever. And these areas that we had laid out, designed, and we were so excited about, just couldn't come. So the park, just pictures of what was in the park and the disaster that we had going on. This was in the softball complex, and everybody knows where that was in the park. Because our maintenance building was destroyed, and that we had it go here, we had a garden was, ruined, it was all gray. All the electrical systems and irrigation and most of the plants, were all destroyed. And an interesting part about this, when we went to make a damage claim to FEMA for the damage part, right? And we had irrigation and electrical and plants, we wanted to restore the garden. And when we first did that, they refused our application for aid because they said, well, we don't buy flowers. We don't, we're FEMA, we don't buy flowers. And we're not gonna, this is a garden, we're not gonna. And so so we had to make the cases, okay, flowers are the business of the garden. The garden is the business, and the flowers are the business of the garden. So, I mean, it took us months and months of appeals and all that to get them to agree to that. One other funny story, in early November, we were in our little trailer, and there's a few of us were in a trailer, and a representative from FEMA showed up. Now, this is November, right? So we've been all through September, all through October, nobody from FEMA has ever come by to contact us or anything. He shows up, comes into the office. He ran a saccharin plant in Alabama. That's what he did in his normal job. But in a disaster, he works for FEMA. He runs in, in funds. But I mean, his job was making, exactly, it felt bad. So he had no idea about anything. I mean, but he did. He came in and he said, well, everything that you're going to repair has to have 3 public bids. You have to get 3 public bids for anything before we can give you any money. And so we looked at him and we said, okay, how are we actually supposed to do that? I said, we have no phone, we have no fax, we have no internet, we have no way to communicate with anybody. There's nothing here. We can't. How am I going to find 3, to make bids when I can't even call my wife on it? I mean, there's nothing here. And he said, well, there's a chapter in the book that's titled this. He said, if you go ahead and you make repairs and you don't get these 3 bids, you're going to have silver handcuffs and you're going to go to the penitentiary. We were like, we don't even know where the penitentiary is. It didn't get us, don't get us for the 13 people that are here and then 23 people. Anyway, this is the golf course. You can see where the water line stabilized. It was actually 8 feet high here when it reached its peak of flooding, and then it stabilized kind of right there. This is in our offices, inside the building. That was our maintenance building, and didn't fare too well. In fact, you can see the building on the left is actually still standing in the park, as the park tries to raise money to renovate that. There's actually 2 buildings over there, but most of it, was destroyed. There was part of the equipment that was destroyed. That was inside the golf clubhouse, the golf equipment, the Wisner Tennis Center. We actually had offices in the Wisner Tennis Center for a while. We actually were in trailers in the Wisner Tennis Center for 5 years before we were able to rebuild our administration building. This is the Arbor Room. You know where Pop Fountain is, and that, which we had built as a catering facility. And those were after a while, the state sent us a couple more trailers. So we had 3 trailers. We thought we were really hot stuff. I mean, we had 3 whole trailers, and we put the Friends of City Park in part of them. And so we were here for the longest 5 years before we could move into an administration building. And another interesting story on this, one day I was in the office, and we had a volunteer who was manning like a front desk, like a reception, because we didn't have money for a receptionist. So we had a volunteer, and she came in, and I was at an office in the back, and she said, Bob, there's a woman here, and she wants to see you. And I said, okay. And my receptionist volunteer said, and she's crying. I just want to let you know, she's crying. And I said, well, certainly tell her I'm here. Certainly, I'm ready for that. Anyway, she came in and she said, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and it's her birthday, and coming up in like a week or so. And our house was in Lakeview, and it's destroyed. It's been gutted now, and there's nothing but 2x4s, and and he said, I cannot have a birthday party for my daughter in this house. I can't do it. And so I need you to park to have a birthday party for my daughter. And I was like look around. But I'm not anything. Like I don't know, what can I tell you? She said, how about if I just went over to the peristyle, which is in the front metal lagoon system. And I said, well, I mean, we have nothing there. And she's crying vociferously. And I said, okay, let me see what I can do. So I got director of operations who had nobody to direct other than himself. Rob Muniz was his name. And Rob said, all right, we put something together. So he found a pressure washer and we cleaned off the periscope because it was full of, you can imagine, full of. And then we went and we stole a couple of portlets from another construction site nearby and stole them. And we took them, hauled them over to the periscope. And then I don't know where Rob found. He like found a couple of tables and chairs, and we put them out there. And the woman came back and they said, "Okay, we can have your party. This is the limitation, but we can have your party." And she was thrilled. I mean, she was thrilled to be able to have it in the park, not in her ruined house. And we have story after story like that, and then it's so inspiring. A lot of those stories are in the book. Some of those stories will be in the next book, but they're in that book. And so finally, after a while, for the first 6 months, FEMA gave us a grand total of $6,500 for books that were lost in the Botanical Gardens library. That's the only claim that they paid, $6,500. But we were able to go to the state, and I said to the state, the commissioner, administration, and all that, I basically said, if we don't get some help, we're going to walk away. We don't have any money, can't pay anybody, we can't make any money. If you don't help us, we're just going to walk away. We're going to leave this big pus pit in the middle of the city, and you can try to recover. You can try to recover the city if that's the case. And the state were really good. They in early 2006, they put us in the operating budget for like $1.5 million. It was like unbelievable, and it allowed me to hire back staff and pursue fundraising and they kept us in the operating budget for like 4 years until we were able to fix and repair most of the stuff that we have. This, of course, is the Great Lawn, which we got money from the Goldgreen Moldenberg Foundation to build in place that was where the tennis courts were in the front of the park. And with the help of the state and our operating budget and the donors, we were able finally to begin to implement the park's new master plan, which we had just adopted like months before Hurricane Katrina hit. So we had a new master plan, move the tennis courts to where they are on Marconi, redo the center of the park, build miniature golf, all the other things that you see in the park that happened came out of that master plan. And we were so fortunate that we had just done the master plan. And another story and I think it was November in my little trailer, there was a knock on the door and 2 people came in and they were in suits, and a lady was dressed and said, we're from the Starbucks Foundation, and we want to help the city. And we've been to see the city, and we've been to see Nord, the recreation agency of Nord, but they don't have a plan. He said they don't know what they want to do, to rebuild the city. And I said, I have a plan. And I'm going to have a plan that can help you in whatever way you think you want. You want to donate trees, you want to donate whatever. And so they donated $250,000 to redo some of the play that was in the fund. This is in the amusement park. Just gives you an idea of the number of people that we went to, the number of people we solicited, the number of people that we begged money for them, and who came to us, just showed up and came to us. Dow Chemical, new money for the Ferris wheel. And this is the new tennis courts that were new at the time when we moved them over to Marconi and freed up space in the front of the park. It's one of the finest smaller tennis facilities in the South. We're very proud of that. And this is a bigger view of, you see the art museum up on the left, the garden kind of in the lower part, a big new parking area that Mary Landrew was so instrumental in helping us get money for, so that people would have a place to park. So if you go to the park and you went to the garden show, or you went and you more than likely you parked in that parking lot, right in front of everything. Before that, there was tennis courts. There was hardly any place to park. So even in a park, parking is important for people to visit. And of course, a crowning achievement, everyone has to have a dog, right? You have to have a dog park, or you're not considered a great park. So we raised money with our volunteers, and even Jackie Shreves and Kathleen Shrink and some of those ladies who raised money because they had dogs and they wanted a dog park. And we built this dog park over by Popsa, just north of where I-610 is near Mount Marconi. And this dog park received the prestigious 5-Paw Award from the National Dog Park Association. So that's there. And I take my golden retriever there every morning, to play. Let's see here. This is another view kind of the peristyle. You see the peristyle kind of on the lower left there in the casino building, getting money, encouraging Cafe Human to bid and lease to redo the building and come in. These are all strategies that we had in the master plan. Big lake area is part of the South Golf Course. When I got to the park, there were 4 golf courses. During the course of the time, we eliminated 2 in order to be able to provide more land for other things, other activities. We built a championship golf course. So what did we accomplish in here? Well, one of the things we did is we got a portion of the state tax that goes on slot machines at racetracks. Is that typical way you fund a park? When you're desperate, you take money from anybody. So we got a portion on slot machines at racetracks statewide. One of the best things I ever did was hire a really great lobbyist, Carol, who helped us navigate the state area. And then when the fairgrounds turned around and it got its casino, right? The neighborhood association, the St. John Neighborhood Association, helped us convince the legislature that we had to get a share of the tax on the slot machines that are at the fairgrounds racetrack. So when you go to the fairgrounds, and I know you all go, and when you go, I don't really care if you've been on any horses or go down to the casino and do the slot machine. Because the park gets a share of that revenue. Just go down there and yank that thing, and they get a share of the revenue. And then I'm sure most of you probably should remember in 2019, advancing those years, we had a redistribution of the property tax money in New Orleans area that gave City Park funding from the property tax for the first time in the city park's history. 160 years, the park had never received a dime from the city of New Orleans to operate. And finally we got that. Capital funding, we created a special tax district. We raised the park's little endowment. When I got to the park, it was $46,000. So we raised $6 million for that. And we've spent more than $200 million in that park. Recovering from Katrina, implementing the park's master plan. I'm sure a lot of you can't see this, but this is just management successes when I talk to groups that are interested in management issues. We created chief operating officer position, administrative development director. We increased our minority hiring. We developed a horticulture program. And then the things that we did, build a great lawn, a new tennis complex, the championship golf course on Fillmore. We rebuilt the maintenance building, administration building, miniature golf. Those are all the master plan things. And here I knew you can't read this because I can't read this, but it talks about, we planted more than 7,500 trees, in the park in an attempt to reforest the park. We built miles and miles of jogging and walking paths. When I got to the park north of I-610, there wasn't a sidewalk. There was no sidewalk. And not on Wisner, not on Marconi, not on what was Robert E. Lee. You were in the street if you were in the park. So we built, we built all that. And then we were really rolling and we were recovering. And then in 2015, Mayor Landry decided he was going to take the Confederate monuments, right? Take the 4 monuments. For all the reasons that we know, I don't need to go into any of them. Anyway, we had one right at the front of the park, General Beauregard, PGT Beauregard, who was a target, really, of the ones that were taken because he fired on Fort Sumter. it's basically a bad movement, his mark train in Fort Sumter. So he became a prime, prime one to take. And then in 2017, they actually came and took, brought a crane and took the general and his horse. He's sitting in New Orleans East right at the moment inside a warehouse that contains Robert Lee and Jeff Davis. They didn't take the pedestal, so we had to demolish it. So the park had to demolish the pedestal. And when I said to the mayor, "You took the freaking statue. You don't think about the pedestal. I mean, what are we supposed to do with the pedestal?" But if you go out there today, you'll know that the pedestal is down, but the raised area is still there, and the park plants flowers and trees and stuff on it, because the city has not been able to come to any conclusion about what to do. And the park has the pedestal. We have it. It's an interesting story. You have to buy the book in order to really know the whole history of this. But obviously, the taking of the Confederate monuments was a very divisive period, right? A lot of people feel different ways about it. These were stones thrown up onto the park by people who obviously, wanted us to take a more forceful action to prevent the city from seizing the statue. As I said to many people, I said, okay, they have a police force and it's armed, so we're not going to go out there and stand around the statue, it's not going to happen that way. And then another interesting story about that, I got a call one day. I'm sitting in the office, and after I got this call, I stopped taking calls, right? And once I saw their name, I didn't take any calls anymore. But this guy gets on the phone and are you Mr. Becker? Yeah, are you responsible for the statue? Well, and he's yelling and screaming, and he said, "This is outrageous, horrible. You should be ashamed to call yourself a son of the South." And I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily want to rain on your parade, but I'm from Buffalo. I am not the son of the South. Anyway, and so we're out showing up onto the park's property. I've never been sure if that was meant just for me or just for the whole park, the whole park staff. But anyway, it was a very decisive period, and it was very difficult. So then, part of the plan was to get a new cultural facility in the park. So we worked with the Children's Museum, which is one of the finest children's museums in the country. We're very fortunate to have that in the park. Shaded with them, bring them from downtown and put them in the park. So, and as I said, when the property tax redistribution passed, first time in 169 years that the city actually, paid money towards the park. Then COVID hit. It just gave me the real appreciation of the cyclical nature of major public facilities. But you remember all the words, everything we learned about COVID, hydroxychloroquine, drinking bleach, community spread, all that. And the governor shut down the economy again, right? And shut down the economy. It wasn't a natural disaster or man-made, if you want to, consider the levee break core sponsored and or core applies. But he shut down the economy. He shut down everything in the park. We couldn't have any events, couldn't have any weddings, couldn't have anything. The only thing he allowed to stay open were the golf courses. The 2 golf courses he allowed to stay open because they were outside, they were not going to be inside, and it was stuff to spread. And when we were building the new championship golf course, you remember this, we had people sitting in trees, objecting to the golf courses being built and rebuilt. But when COVID came a couple of years later, it was the only, it's the only thing that made any money for us during that whole time. This is all the things that, the governor was forced to do. And then finally, once again, we had to appeal to the state, say, you shut us down, we can't make any money now. And the state legislature finally in October of 2020 put us in the operating budget for $2.5 million to help tide us over until we were allowed to reopen the facilities. So the state is a great part. Wildflowers, I've done a lot. I spent $200 million in this park. I've done a lot of things. I never get more credit for anything more than the wildflowers. It's real interesting to me. When I'm out or someplace and people, will come up and aren't you, so-and-so and yada, yada. And they always say, love those wildflowers. Well, it's probably the cheapest thing that we did. But anyway, we love it. I say, so what lessons did we learn during this whole event? Okay, it's important to have a plan for what you're going to do. And it's important to have a plan before the disaster hits, right? It doesn't help to have the plan after the disaster has occurred. And that's what the city went through. It had no plan. And so it spent years developing a plan on how to spend relief money that came our way. We had a plan. It was vetted thoroughly. And as a result, we were able to jump on it. And it greatly helped us securing money from all public and private sources. All plans have to have overarching goals and strategies. It's in the book. I won't describe it. What our overarching thought was in the master plan of how we were going to rearrange land uses, which were controversial, right? I mean, it's, when you mess with a park, it's controversial from the very nature of it. But we had good strategy. We understood what we were doing, and we were able to implement the plan through the goals and strategies. Expect the unexpected, the importance of cash, right? Everybody here probably understands that now, right? Everybody understands that. As I said, we were 6 months waiting for the federal government to come and help us. 6 months, we had $6,500. $6,500. So I learned from that we needed to have cash in the bank. Just because we were a public agency, we needed cash in the bank. And when the governor shut down everything with COVID, I had $2 million I was able to save in the bank, which kept the number of layoffs that I had to do relatively small compared to Katrina, and gave us some money to start up again once the governor, released it. So there is no substitute for having cash, and I think everybody has to learn it. It's difficult to be entrepreneurial as a public agency with public assets. So you hear this all the time: public-private partnership. We're going to go into business with a private company, and so we're going to be entrepreneurial. We're going to make money, and that's how we're going to keep your taxes low, because we're going to make money, and your tax dollars aren't going to have to fund all the improvements that you say you want. You want this, you want that, you want this, you want that, but you don't want to pay for that. So private sector will pay for that, and in return, they're going to be able to sell widgets or do whatever the private sector does. So that's really hard, because in my opinion, this is just me talking. At the end of the day, and being entrepreneurial is all about risk, right? That's what it is. It's a risk. You're taking a risk in the hope of getting a big reward. In general, I do not believe the public wants us to take risks with their public money. I just don't see that. They want public gains funded properly. But if you insist on having things that you don't want to pay for, but you want them anyway, then that's how you get into the public-private business. And when that happens, you would take on a certain amount of risk, and you have to be prepared to have it go south. Just like all businesses are prepared for that. Build an endowment, goes without saying. Important perseverance. I said when the hurricane hit, I didn't think we could recover in 25 years. I thought it would take 25 years for us to recover. But you keep at it, 1 foot in front of the other, and you just keep moving forward, and you get someplace. The lie of we are all in this together. This is me. You hear this I heard this all the time. We're all in this together. And I would go, no, I don't have anything. We're all in this together. If you had no savings, if you had no insurance, and your business was wiped out, your home was wiped out, you're not in the same place as somebody who had that, right? You just aren't. You're not in the same place. So we need to talk about this. We're all in this together, because we're not all in this together. And just a thought on the role of surveys. This comes from my background in city planning. So almost all plans that you see done today, it's all about survey, right? It's all about asking people what they want. What do you want? I want miniature golf, I want, 2 golf courses, I want, flowers, I want, yada, yada. I want this, I want picnic grounds, I want shelters and all that, and you have a big survey. Yeah. And at the end of this day, what a lot of city planners today do, I believe, is they simply give people back what they say they want it, right? And then it's really moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic to decide where in the city or the park, hello, Susan. I have to point out Susan Hess, just walked in, was the president of the park board when I was doing my lot of them. She's like, "Your big man." So, it's like, and so I thought about this for a long time and said, I went to school for a long time to develop my own ideas about what I think needs to be done. And if all I'm going to do is just have a survey, well, you really don't need anybody, right? All you need is to have a survey, and you get the list of things that people say they want. Yeah, and that's it. When we did our survey, which we did for our master plan, there was no support for dog. There was none. There was none. The survey ranked consistently, like way at the bottom of all the things. I want new tennis courts. I want a new catering facility. I want the botanical garden. I want another part of the sculpture garden. I want, this, and dog park was at the bottom. But I knew from the training that I had that dogs were really tough, and they were growing in the West. And I thought, I know people are going to want a dog park here. So we invested over $500,000 in building that dog park. And it's one of the most popular things we ever did, was to create this for the people who love their animal and want to have a place to play. So I just think the role of surveys, we've reached the point where we're just surveying people, just asking what you want, and with no regard for, is that the most important thing that you can ask for? Is that the most important thing that the community really needs? Is on the survey. Pretty soon we're going to get to the singularity. I don't know if you all remember this, but it came to me when we were talking about the totality of the eclipse, and everybody's in the totality. Are you in the totality of the eclipse? Yeah. Well, a number of years ago, this guy put forth this theory called the singularity, and it's the point at which artificial intelligence and machine learning surpass the ability of human society to control it. And the machines have basically taken over. That's where I feel like the surveys, we just survey people. and we know what to do. Anyway, it's just neither here nor there. So, go ahead.
Back to how I said.
I was like, we're leave on it. And wild. So anyway, that's kind of the history. That's what the book covers, kind of the history of the park and the various challenges that the park has been through, and how we did what we did for the 20 years that I was in charge of City Park, and I hope you like what we did in the park. And it took everybody. I mean, if it wasn't for the volunteers that came out and the people who the donors and corporations gave money, and the state government that came to our rescue, really, citizens, redoing the property tax formula, and that we could never accomplish what we did, never. So I hope everybody can appreciate the role that everybody had played in the rebirth of this park. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Canadian who went to Storyland when I first went as a little girl. Took my children there, and now just spent 3 days in the park last week with my grandchildren. So just thank you so much, because the park is wonderful.
I remember going into the park, right? When I first got back after Katrina, there were 4 of us. We went into the park. We couldn't get into the park because the National Guard had barbed wired off the entrances to the park to protect the art museum. Well, we managed to struggle into the park, and the first place we went was Storyland, and then we went to the garden right next door, right? So we went to Storyland. Mother Goose is hanging from the tree upside down, and right, it's on the ground, and it was it was that, and then right next to it was starting, I mean, it was the gardener, he's starting it. We thought, well, let's go in, let's try to get in and see how bad the garden is. And, we go over the gate, of course, it's locked, you know, it's fit as in the keys, but anyway, as we're there, and one of our guys is kind of rattling on the Storyland gate, and I'm kind of rattling on the, botanical garden gate. The National Guard comes rolling around the art museum. He's right around the circle there. Comes around the art museum, and they all got like big time questions. So and then over the top of the art museum comes this helicopter. And it rises over the top of the art museum, moves over and hovers over. And you know, and there's just the four of us, you know, like and then the helicopter had gun turrets on it. So as it hovered over us, you could hear it go bird, bird, like you know, like they're cocking the gun. And I thought, I'm gonna be killed trying to break into the garden. We're on shot, you know, trying to rescue and introduce the retreat. And I was looking here. And then so National Guard thought we might be looters, you know, so they hang around. Anyway, that's my story. My story, so just that.
Eventually pay up to the park or the FEMA.
FEMA?
When-
Yes,
when
yes,
they didn't
yes,
pay-
yes. And here's an interesting story. In January of this year, 2024, the park settled its final claim with FEMA.
Wow.
19 years. It was on the new roller coaster that we built inside the amusement park. If you've ever been in Lakewood roller coaster, you know, we had to build a coaster, and that, I mean, it was just horrible. But anyway, 19 years later, we settled up, and FEMA eventually provided about $33 million over the course of 19 years. And that's where the persistence part comes in. You can't give up. You just got to keep on them and keep on them and keep on them. And there's another story. So the turf in Tad Gormley Stadium was all destroyed. So we put a claim. Can't play football, right? Put in a claim. FEMA said, well, that's grass. We don't pay for grass. They said, no. This is the turf of the stadium. This is how we play sports. This is how we generate money. And it took us almost a year to get FEMA to agree that they could pay for the grass that was actually the turf. In fact, Reggie Bush gave us $86,000, I think, to help tear out all the dead grass and, you know, put in the new turf. So, yes, ma'am.
I think we should show those wildflowers to FEMA,
Yeah.
as if we got them anyway.
We're gonna get it anyway. Okay, you guys see the tulips that were out just a
little bit about the relationship with Noma and a sculpture garden.
No, in the sculpture garden. So when I got to the park, the sculpture garden, the first phase of the sculpture garden had already been built, right? So the park had a lease with the museum to build and maintain and operate the sculpture garden. So that was already in effect when I, but shortly thereafter, the board and president of the museum wanted to build a second phase, right? A second phase of the sculpture garden. So, we thought that was a good idea because if you remember where the second phase is right now, it was kind of a dusty dirt. I mean, lagoon was not. We weren't by where the Girl Scout cabin is. Kind of, we were not doing a good job of taking care of it, and so we thought this will be a good thing. You know, this will be a very good thing, and we were able to reach an agreement with that museum to allow that to open up.
And so Noma leases the land.
Noma leases the land at no cost. You know, they don't pay. They don't charge anything, but and they don't pay us anything.
Does the park get any credit, and can you monetize the credit for the drainage service you provide to the whole city? Imagine if you were paved over, what would happen to drainage in the city? And
Yeah.
it seems like that would be a function that could be monetized.
Well, I think we we often talk when we make presentations, park holds over 200 million gallons of water, that otherwise, as you say, if we were paved over, would be in everybody's backyard. And, we tried to be able to sort of convert that function of us holding all this water into funding, to repair the lagoons. All the lagoons in the park were built by hand. Except for the Bayou Metairie right on the front of City Park Avenue. So they were all dug. They've never been cleaned, they've never been taken care of. It's a huge cost, right, to dredge and clean out the lagoons. And we were hoping, as part of the city's strategy of living with water, the big drainage strategy that the city had, to be able to get money to do that because of the function of holding water in the park. And we tried. And then I retired, and then the new CEO tried for over a year to try to work that out. And we never, the park could never really do that because part of the strategy of the city strategy for that was they wanted the park to hold more water. They wanted to hold the water from Lake Vista. That when it rained on Lake Vista, the water would drain into the park would hold that water, slow it down so that the pumps that drain Lakeview would have a chance to drain Lakeview while the park held that water and Lake Vista and held the water. But I think the residents of Lake Vista, were never convinced that the Sewage and Water Board's engineering was correct. They're probably not convinced that the park could actually maintain the additional water that we were expected to hold. And so that fell away. Yes, sir.
I wonder, I love what you've done in the park and wonderful to watch it happen all these years. But I never understood why they took the horse corrals right next to the bayou on an uphill slant.
You mean the one north of Fillmore? You're not talking about the police.
No.
Going north.
It's 10 feet from the bayou.
That was there when I got there. Why? I don't know why it was decided to put it there. Leslie Kramer, has run that place for many years, and she was there when I got there. Made a lot of improvements to it, but as to how it got located there, why it was located there, I don't know. I really don't. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the bayous, both natural and artificial, never having been properly cleaned or maintained. Well, how much would the water holding capacity increase if they were cleaned and maintained to the level that you imagine possible?
I don't know an exact number, or even I don't even know an approximate number. I think
50 million.
it would be way more efficient. What more?
50 million gallons.
50 million gallons. This man right here. Yeah. Mark works for an engineering company that the park had retained to help develop the strategy of holding more water and all that. So if he says it's 50 million, believe him right now.
Right.
Does anybody, yes, ma'am?
Talk a little bit about the oak trees and the plan to take care of the oak trees too here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you think of City Park, everybody thinks almost first thing you think of is the oak trees, right? And in the front of the park there off Bayou Metairie, the park holds like 2,500 of the most valuable live oaks in the country, really, up in that area. And then in the rest of the park, mostly they were planted, because it was mostly swamp for a long period of time. So the trees have been through a variety of issues. Most of the oak trees are infested, with the Formosan termite, and have been infested for years and years. And we had a program with the Department of Agriculture that sits up on the Elm Center Boulevard, in which they tested out the various baits and things that they use in the quarter in residential areas, and they had that for I don't know how many years, and then when Mary Lander was defeated for senator, they lost their funding because the new senator didn't care about that. about that. So they lost their funding, so right now, as far as I'm aware, the park doesn't treat the oaks. And eventually, Formosan termite wins, eventually. We also had a program that we've done for years in which we have tried to redirect drainage away from the roots of the oak trees. When I got there, a lot of the drainage patterns and all that, just put water, and they are not good. If they sit underwater, they are not good. So we've tried in many areas of the park to redirect the drainage away. The oak tree is an iconic species. It's hardy. It's really made for this area. If it has good drainage, it's really made for this area. And I would assume that the park will continue to plant and a variety of species, including life.
I think we're gonna have to stop. It's after 11. I'm sorry. I know.
That's okay. I'll be over here.
I want to thank,
Anybody wants to stop?
I want to thank Bob for his presentation. Complete questions all the way through the next half hour or so. So, Bob, before I let you go, we do give a small gift to all of our speakers. It is our
In case it rains.
so much for your time
Thank you
and
so much.
it was a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm drawing a blank on our next speaker, but we do have a May speaker already lined up. So second Thursday of the month is our regular meeting time. So please plan to attend and we will see you in May.
I'd like to go.
June. Lucky Donna, June. From there. And I'm gonna get this. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Good job with it.